So we've talked about the formation of the 13 colonies of America and the American Revolution, which ultimately gives them their freedom as a new country, America. This ultimately leads to the French Revolution, okay, with their new consulate under Napoleon. And so in America, you have the Declaration of Independence, which says all men are created equal. And in the French Revolution, you have the preamble on the rights of men, which also states that men are created equal. So this shakes up things in America, in France, and throughout all of these colonies and slave territories. Because now you have a situation where, these slaves are wondering, okay, you saying all men, are we free as well? But of course, these slave owners don't want to give up their possessions and wealth. So now this creates a lot of friction. Okay. So this is what really leads us up to the Haitian Revolution in Hispaniola. So by now, Hispaniola is divided by Spain and the Eastern Territories, and France and the Western Territories, and Saint Domingue. And now these slaves are hearing these talks from France and their revolution. So now this leads us up to Dutty Boukman in 1791 and Fatima. So Dutty Boukman, he's this African slave that was from Jamaica, and he actually learned how to read. He taught himself how to read, and that's why his name was Boukman. Okay, so Dutty Boukman was ultimately he was a very wise man who was considered this priest, this voodoo priest. And Fatima was basically considered this voodoo priestess. Okay, and voodoo, this is where you get the modern day interpretation of, all these zombies in these zombie movies. Okay. Because to the Haitians, a zombie was somebody who forgot who they were and took on this new colonial mindset. That's where you get the concept of zombies and voodoo. But on a deeper level, you have all these slaves getting imported, whether it's from the natives cultures, whether it's from Brazil, the Americas, or even from Africa. So you have all these Black slaves being imported and deported as slaves to different areas. And many of them still have consciousness of course, of where they came from, which also means, they're reminiscent of their freedoms, but also they remember their cultures and along with that, their religions. So many of them were Catholics, Christian, Jews, Muslims. Okay. You have all these ideologies clashing. And as slaves, they basically they'll take their, for example, Christian identity and maybe also their Yoruba origins and pretty much mix it all together. So this is really how you get the culture of voodoo, because there's many Christian aspects, many Catholic aspects, many Jewish aspects, and also many Yoruba aspects involved here. Okay. So in 1791, these French colony slaves of Saint Domingue are hearing, these thoughts of the French Revolution. And this leads us to Dutty Boukman and Fatima. Okay. So Dutty Boukman was this he was a slave from Jamaica, which taught himself to read, which is why you get the name Boukman. Okay. And ultimately he was considered a voodoo priest. And then you have Fatima, which is considered another voodoo priest. And they end up gathering together on this night in 1791. Okay. And in this night, they gather many of these slaves together under secrecy and the cover of darkness in the forest. And it's ultimately this sacred ritual where they're dancing, they're lighting torches around the fire, and eventually Fatima, this priestess, cuts open a pig, and this pig bleeds out. And it's said that Bookman drinks the blood of this pig. So this whole ritual, the whole ritual was basically the beginning of the rebellion. It's basically a blood sacrifice. It was a casting off of fear of death for them. So from this point on, the slaves were united and set on rebellion. Okay. And this very night, the slaves end up rebelling. So the top crops were sugar and coffee. So throughout this night of terror, these slaves burn up many of the sugar plantations and many of these coffee plantations. And also, they're murdering hundreds to thousands of these slave captives, these slave owners, I mean. Okay? So this is really an all-out revolt. Okay? So this is 1791, and this is the start of the rebellion. And this really sent shockwaves throughout the whole world, especially through France. Okay, so now this leads us to the rise of Toussaint Louverture. And he really takes lead of this rebellion. Toussaint Louverture, he was raised a slave on one of these plantations in Saint Domingue. Okay, so he was raised as a slave, and he was also taught to read and write. And growing up into adulthood, he became a prominent businessman, and he acquired a lot of social status as well. So he leveraged his status and ultimately became the prominent leader of this rebellion. So now you have Toussaint Louverture in charge, commander-in-chief of the slaves. And Toussaint Louverture really takes these thousands of slaves and trains them to be able to resist these French troops. Now, this is really a 12-year war, a 12-year rebellion from 1791 to 1804. So there was nothing pretty about this war. There's nothing pretty about this revolution. There was atrocities on both sides because, you have these white slave owners who don't even really see these black people as humans. And at the same time, you have these black rebels that are trying to earn their freedom. So you could just only imagine the atrocities and horrors that happen on both sides of the spectrum here. So on this slave rebellion, the slave army, you have many mulattoes, you have many former slaves, and also you have many freemen bonding together. And, to avoid the fact that, okay, this slave might tell on us, they really were big on killing anybody that was considered to basically be a snitch that would ruin the whole operation of this revolt. Okay. So now Toussaint Louverture ultimately ends up basically declaring Haiti a free state in its territory of Saint Domingue, Western Hispaniola. Okay. And Napoleon, by this time, Napoleon is gaining power in France. And Napoleon hears about this. And of course, this is one of his, this is one of his richest colonies in the Americas. He has a big interest in the New World. So Napoleon really wants to put this to an end. At the same time, France and Napoleon has thousands of troops invested in their territories in America, these Louisiana territories. Okay. So ultimately, Napoleon comes and he basically says, okay, I'm going to send these troops from Louisiana, from these North American territories, down and to suppress this revolt in Haiti. Okay. And basically Napoleon sent his brother to do this. He sends thousands of troops and his brother to come do this operation. So now when Napoleon's brother comes on the shores, he ends up suppressing the rebellion of Toussaint Louverture. And ultimately, he captures Toussaint Louverture. Or they say Toussaint Louverture decided to go back to France. Because, Toussaint Louverture he considered himself a Frenchman, a French, a member of France, okay? A France citizen, a citizen of France, okay? So Napoleon was able to basically convince him to come back to France. And this was in 1803 now. So now in 1803, Toussaint Louverture ends up dying while he's over there in France in prison. It's said that, he's probably tortured or poisoned to death. Okay. But back home, the revolution still lives on, and the next general in command, John Dessalines, takes over the Haitian Revolution. Okay. And during this time, you have this slave woman that was a former Dahomey Amazon. Her name was Victoria. And her nickname was Aunt Tori. So she was actually critical in this role as well, because she had formerly trained Toussaint Louverture and mentored him. And now she's working with Dessalines. Okay. So this shows just how these different identities are working together in this revolution. Okay. So now Dessalines takes over. And this is later in the year after Toussaint Louverture has died. But the revolution still lives on. Okay. And ultimately, this leads up to a battle with Napoleon's brother at the Battle of Louveture. And during this battle, facing against these French troops, Dessalines is looking for somebody courageous in his army. Okay. He says, I need you to take this flag and run it up on top of this hill within the next hour. And the first person he tells this, he's like, but the French are here. He's scared at what he sees, the sight of these French armies in their guns. Dessalines says, get out of here. He says, I need somebody to raise this flag on top of this mountain. He says, I got you. I'll take on these bullets, but I need you to do your job and put this flag on top of this mountain. And that's where you get Copa. So now this battle's raging on. And these Haitians are taking many hits from these French bullets. And the whole time, Copa is riding his horse on top of this hill with this flag, this Haitian flag. As he's riding on top of these hills through the singing bullets, his horse gets struck by bullets. So Copa comes flying off of his horse. Then Copa raises his sword above his head. And he continues his march up the hill with this flag. Now, during this battle, the French troops, they see the mighty valor of these revolting Haitians in these battles, just taking these bullets, dying full of glory and valor for their countrymen. And they stopped this battle. Mid-battle, they stopped the war. And these French troops applaud the Haitians for their valor. They're like, we've never seen nothing like this. You guys are very courageous. And Copa puts his flag on top of the hill, his Haitian flag, at the Battle of Vertières. Ultimately, the French troops are driven back, and Haiti is now formed as a free country. Okay. So now you have these Haitians in this free country, which builds on the declaration that, basically their Declaration of Independence that Toussaint Louverture had already put into play before he died. And now you have Dessalines, who has taken over. So he does his part as well. Okay. And this all leads up to Henry Christophe, who ultimately becomes the first king of Haiti. So this is the story of Haiti and how it was formed. And this was really the first time in the history of the world where a slave revolt has turned into the formation of a free country. So Haiti is the first free country, the first free Black republic in the New World. And that is how you get the Haitians of today. So we see how the American Revolution has led to the French Revolution, and how the French Revolution led to the Haitian Revolution. Okay? And now we're going to fast forward to about 1863, to Abraham Lincoln's time leading up to the Civil War. And now Abraham Lincoln finally recognizes Haiti as a country. So now we see how the Haitian Revolution ultimately leads up to the Civil War in America. So as a result of the Haitian War and Napoleon and the French losing this war, Napoleon, he resigns from Haiti, but also he forfeits his Louisiana territories, his territory in America. So ultimately, Napoleon ends up selling the Louisiana territory to the Americans and the Louisiana Purchase. And after the Haitian Revolution, and after losing all of those troops, he really sells his territory for a very small amount per acre. So this was a very big win for America, and this really leads up to the expansion of the Americas and ultimately the Civil War.